All right, of course, we also had this news, of course, Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani is now officially the mayor of New York. So he had this quote that went crazy viral during his inaugural address, that he'll replace rugged individualism with collectivism.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our...
Yeah, that's very communist. And so, yeah, this is just code for we'll steal your stuff and give it to foreigners. Like, he promised to take more taxes and take money from white neighborhoods to give it to brown and black neighborhoods. This is just his way of saying they're going to steal from white people to give to immigrants. He means it. Yep, communism increases wealth inequality by an order of magnitude. Instead of being the top 20% controlling 80% of resources, it becomes a few dozen people in government controlling 100% of resources. So true. Dorno Key, what's up? Thanks for the follow. So, yeah, this is where we're at. And Mania, which is, we just reacted to Shuan Head, but this is Shuan Head's husband. This is actually this is a good point. This man is going to turn me into a bootstraps boomer so fast. This rugged individualism he derides is what built this nation. So it makes sense that he hates it. And when people like him use the word collectivism, they don't mean care for the common good. Care for a good that is common. And he's certainly not talking about anything close to distributism or anything like that. It's gilded, envy and grievance, resentment and theft. He'll enable it all under the guise of social programs. See Minneapolis. Yep, so true. This post-leftoid says, we need to replace consumerist individualism with nationalist collectivism. Mamdani is not doing that. He is replacing productivity with parasitism, and both in societal virtues and literal populations. That's true, okay? Here's the thing, chat. You guys know me. At this point, you should know by now, I am not a rugged individualist, because we are all social creatures. We belong to a family. We belong to a community. We belong to a nation. We belong to a people, okay? We belong to a faith. Like, we are not silos. We are not just in our own islands. We are people that collectivize. We do. We find our identities in these collections of identity, right? Like for me, I'm a Christian, so I belong to the church. I belong to Christ. I'm a Korean, so I belong to the Korean people. I'm an American citizen, so in here, I am an American. Like all these identities, right? I'm a Lee. So I belong to the Lee clan, and a specific Lee clan. And so these things are part of who we are. So to say that you're just a blank slate individual, like, that's a lie. That's a lie of liberalism. So to say that we're just like these economic units, that we're just replaceable, that we're just all like individuals, like, that's not right. That is a false anthropology. And so understanding collectivism in the sense of like, yeah, like, we need to collectivize and have a shared identity, that's important, actually. But Mamdani's not doing that. Like this post-leftoid says he is replacing productivity with parasitism. So parasitism. So yeah, so basically, those who build will be replaced by those who only take and only destroy. And that's what most of these third world immigrants are, and these illegals in this country. They are parasites. They literally act as parasites. And he's going to replace the goodness and the virtues with his communist whatever, his communist ideals, his ideologies. The ideology that is built on envy and theft, okay? So the Chivalry Guild, okay, this is really important. Individualism and collectivism are not the only options, okay? Rugged individualism and communist collectivism are actually two sides of the same coin. Individualism is obviously better than whatever warm awfulness this fool is selling, but it's more like a stop along the way than a real alternative. We aren't individuals. We are persons, social animals, members of families, churches, tribes, brotherhoods, mezzanis, communities. Strict individualism hollows these intermediate institutions of belonging, which protect us, and leaves us just the individual and the collective, preparing the way for pathetic Mamdani-style tyranny. And this person says, agreed, pure individualism hollows out the intermediate institutions, family, church, brotherhood, community, that form the protective layers between person and state. Strip those away, and the isolated individual faces the collective alone, atomized, defenseless, ripe for managerial tyranny. Civic republicanism offers the real alternative. Persons embedded in layered, reciprocal communities where rights come with duties, protection with contribution. These institutions train competence, enforce boundaries, and distribute agency, making sovereignty attemptable without central override. Mamdani's warm collectivism is just a tyrannical endgame of dissolved mediations. Rebuild the layers. That's the path to genuine freedom. So this is true. This is true, guys. And this is what right-wingers need to understand. That, like this person, Lex Vivendi said, that pure individualism actually causes communism. And you might think it's counterintuitive, but it's not, because the pure individual is isolated, atomized, defenseless against the weight of the collective, because organized collective will always be stronger, more powerful, more forceful than the individual, right? Disparate, segregated, separate individuals will always lose to an organized collective. That's just the bottom line. And then so when communists collectivize and you keep selling people this lie that you're just an individual, communism will always win. Communism will always win. So in order to buck against the tyranny of the collective, okay, we need, like this person says, civic republicanism, right? We need genuine sense of belonging, understanding our institutions of belonging, that we belong to family, community, brotherhood, church. This is where we belong. This is where what roots us, our national identity, our heritage. This is what roots us. And with these communities, these institutions of belonging comes, duties and responsibilities, boundaries, connections, natural bonds and affections. And these are what make people strong and together. And so the goal actually of the communists is to isolate people, because the isolated person, the rootless cosmopolitan, is easy to control. And that's what the globalists want. That's what global Jewry want as well, right? They want you to forget your heritage to make you rootless cosmopolitans. Just these nameless, homogenous economic units. So why? So you're easy to control. That's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. And this is what we need to understand, that the answer to collectivism, communist collectivism, isn't rugged individualism in the sense of we are just individuals. We're just going to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. We have no obligations, no duties. We're just going to I'm going to do my thing over here. You do your thing over there. That is not a viable alternative to communism. And it's not even like a tenable anthropology, because we are social animals. We are social creatures. We all come from a mother and a father. We come from a tribe. We come from a people. We come from a nation. We come from a faith background. These all things are things that root us. And so we need to reclaim that. That's what we need to reclaim in order to fight against tyranny, to fight against communism, because we are social creatures, and when we're isolated, we want a sense of belonging. So you keep telling people that you're just individuals, they will be drawn to some sort of collective. And then the appeal of communism is that for isolated, lonely people, this is why a lot of communists are all like this dysgenic trans people, right? These lonely, like mentally ill people. It gives the appeal to belonging to something greater. And we got to find that in Christ first and foremost, but also in our nation and our shared identity. If we don't do that, and if we don't push that, then communism will win every time. Yes, Andrew, that's a good point. We need to be communitarian, not individualist. We can't. We need to bond together. We need to. And this idea that all tribalism is bad, it's such a losing, unserious strategy against the left. The left is constantly mobilizing. They're constantly strategizing. They're constantly collectivizing. And that's why they keep steamrolling the right. Because the right has this weird utopian idea that we're all just individuals, and if you just do your own thing on your own time, in your own way, we'll all make it out. No, we won't. We won't make it out, okay? That's not how things work. So, and this is like, you saw this, and this picture always goes viral so often, that the warmth of collectivism from space, right? So they always compare like satellite images from South Korea and North Korea. And I get it. I get what they're trying to do, because North Korea is objectively so much more poor than South Korea, and South Korea is so much more developed. But the thing is, this is not a good example. And the reason why it's not a good example is because North Korea has a higher birth rate than South Korea. North Koreans actually have a better sense of national identity. and pride in their national identity more than South Koreans do, because South Koreans are completely consumed by materialism, while North Koreans are completely consumed by communism. And when you think about it, South Korea is a case study for the worst examples of capitalism, and North Korea is a case study for the worst examples of communism, right? The fruits of capitalism, the worst fruits of capitalism manifested in South Korea, and the worst fruits of communism manifested in North Korea. But the reason why South Korea is such a hellhole right now, and the parts of where it is a hellhole, is because of the individualism. It's me, 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 me. It's the atomization of the political creature. It is the atomization of the individual that separates them from their family, that untethers them from their faith and their country. That's why Korea sucks right now. That's why South Korea is dying. Okay, so again, my hot take is like, this is not a helpful picture, okay? It's not a helpful picture for the right when you commentate like this. Because South Korea is dying. It's literally and spiritually dying. It's dying because they have replaced a lot of the things that bonded Korea, that held Koreans together. And it is separating Korea, dividing Koreans. It is pitting Koreans against one another. That Koreans are increasingly isolated, lonely, suicidal, right? Just trapped in their own rooms, in their own little, apartments and 고시원s or opistes. Like, that's what Korea's becoming. And objectively, Korea's dying. South Korea's dying. And because of the individualism that has consumed South Korea, Korea is dying. South Korea is dying. And yes, they have innovation. They have technology. They are on top of the world when it comes to cultural content. But South Korea is dying because of the individualism that led to consumerism, materialism, and careerism. That they forgot the bonds of family, of nationhood, of brotherhood, of church, of community that made Koreans strong in the face of persecution and oppression for centuries. Now, this is what we need to understand as right-wingers. Like, the narrative has to move away from, we are individualists. No, we're not individualists. We belong somewhere. But it has to be the right places of belonging, okay? This is what we need to reclaim. We need to reclaim these proper understandings of belonging and identity. Very important. Yeah, it's funny. But, Zohran Mamdani fans disappointed by disastrous block party with no food and no bathrooms. And I'm like, communists disappointed by having no food? Oh, you're telling me for the first time. Communism. We hate it, folks. We hate it. Okay, but here's an important point. Okay, here's an important point I want to make about Zohran Mamdani. We have laws against communists. Republicans are just too scared to enforce the law, and instead they will tweet, they'll make speeches, they'll do news hits, but they'll do nothing about it, okay? They will do all these like performative things, make hype edits, make press releases, all this stuff, but they will do nothing to attack the enemies and the invaders of America. Look, we have the Communist Control Act of 1954. It's an American law signed by President Dwight Eisenhower on August 24th, 1954, that outlawed the Communist Party USA and criminalized membership. Okay, we have laws in the book that have not been repealed. They just aren't enforced. They aren't enforced due to previous precedent, legal precedent from the courts. Okay? And so everyone's like, oh yeah, but there's legal precedent, but the SCOTUS ruled against it. But that's where we have to just enforce the law. And then if, people try to bring it to court, then we can battle it out in the courts. But they're not even trying to take action in the first place. Right? People said for years, Roe v. Wade will never be overturned. And then what? Few years ago, Roe v. Wade was overturned. Praise God. But how was it overturned? Because there were people who are taking it to the courts. And so if we want to repeal all the terrible things, all the terrible mistakes of the past century in America, that's how we need to take political action. We need to just enforce the law that is already on the books and then take it to the courts and battle it in the courts, right? But the GOP won't do anything because they're just controlled opposition. They will sit on their hands and do nothing as fraud runs rampant, communists infiltrate everywhere, and foreigners take over America. Like, the GOP will do nothing. They'll do nothing. Look, the Somali fraud, the daycare fraud, is one of the biggest stories like in politics in the past few years. Will the GOP do anything about it? No. All they did is cut funding. But that's it. That's it. They paused childcare funding to Minnesota. What else are they going to do? Are they going to lock up people? Are they going to deport people? Are they going to denaturalize people? No, they wouldn't do it. They won't do it. They will not do it because the GOP is controlled opposition. There's one uniparty. The GOP and the Democrats are working together to destroy America, to disenfranchise Americans, and completely subvert America. Because they're godless bureaucrats who only care about their own fame, their own wealth. Republicans are sellouts. Matt Proper, would you ever publicly speak debate if Turning Point asked you to? Of course. Of course. I am not scared of having a conversation or debating. Even if it's like a Canadian version of Turning Point. Yeah, not afraid at all. Jura, would you ever tour Canada? Yeah, I'd be down to. I've only been to Canada 2 times. I went to Toronto, I went to Quebec. But yeah, we just need to enforce the law. But Republicans, conservatives, broadly speaking, are just too weak to do anything. And I know, Elf Siege, what's up? Thanks for the follow. And I know it's easier said than done for me because I'm a content creator. I am a commentator. Hopefully, we're going to move past that and actually mobilize people on the ground to take political action. So you guys can look forward to that. And 2026 is going to be a big year for us, chat. But like the ones who we elected to take political action are sitting on their hands and doing nothing. The GOP is useless. Republicans suck. They won't do anything. And I don't agree with this approach, but I am sympathetic to the approach of Nick Fuentes and other people who say, I'm just not gonna vote anymore. Because what's the point? What's the point? We keep voting in. We literally work our butts off to vote in Republicans. And then what do they do for us? Genuinely, what do they do for us? They're just a break. Literally, they're just a break from the degeneracy and the rampant destruction of the West, but they don't do much to swing it in the other direction. They barely do anything. They barely do anything. And this is the key right here. This is the crux of what's going on. Conservatism, Stephen Wolf, great guy. Conservatism is about screaming, collectivism killed 100 million people, then opening borders to 100 million legal immigrants who will vote for collectivists, right? Oh, we don't hate immigration. We just hate illegal immigration. So we're going to allow for legal immigrants to come in who largely hate America's foundings, don't appreciate America's histories or customs or culture or traditions, and will be okay with these people having the right to vote and telling Americans how they should live their lives. While they literally vote for the collectivism that kills 100 million people, killed 100 million people in the past century. And then Heron Bergenron said, conservatives will tell a communist how many people. 03, what's up? Thanks for the follow. Conservatives will tell a communist how many people communism killed and turn away satisfied in their facts and logic without ever realizing that that person is a communist specifically because of their desire to kill them, right? Again, I'm going to say it again. Conservatives will tell a communist how many people communism killed and turn away satisfied in their facts and logic without ever realizing that person is a communist specifically because of their desire to kill them. Conservatives will go to communists and be like, I'm going to own you with facts and logic. You know how many people communism killed in the past century alone? It killed 100 million people. They'll look at a communist and not make the connection that that communist is a communist because they believe in the ideology that has murdered and genocided over 100 million people. Like, what are we doing here, folks? Like, communists are communists because they believe in the ideology that wants Republicans, that wants conservatives, that wants Christians dead. Now, I'm not saying all communists, but broadly speaking, the really deranged communists are communists because they believe in the ideology that explicitly wants Christians dead. And you just sit on your hand and say, you know, I gave the facts and logic for the day. I own the commies. I'm good for the day. Dude, if you understand the horrors and the dangers of communism, you would want to enforce the laws on the books that would literally criminalize communism. But they don't. Because conservatives are not serious. Most conservatives are not serious about their politics. They don't actually believe what they say they believe. If you really believe that communism was such a great danger, why are you okay with importing people who vote for the communist, Zohran Mamdani? If only native New Yorkers voted, Cuomo would have won. But because all these immigrants and these migrants and these illegals And all these foreigners voted in the mayoral election. Zohran Mamdani won. They don't care that he's a communist. They just voted for him because he's brown. And conservatives will continue to say, yeah, we love legal immigration. And conservatives will continue to say, yeah, I don't agree with your right to believe, I don't agree with communism, but I will defend to the death your right to believe in communism. While these communists avowedly and openly want you and your children and your family dead. Like, what are we doing? Conservatives, hello. Republicans, hello. What are we doing? Like, can we be serious? And so, a lot of politics, unfortunately, is just theater. It's just theater. It's just a show. And the people who hurt the most are just normal people like you and me. And that's the brutal truth. Look, Zohran Mamdani, the first New York City mayor sworn in on Quran when he takes oath of office on January 1st. It should be illegal. We don't swear on any pagan religious text. We swear on the Bible in this country. And Zohran Mamdani is the floodgates. He is opening the floodgates to America being truly a post-Christian nation. And there's no reason why we should accept this. There's no reason why we should tolerate this. There's no reason. And, we shared this before, but as Orwell wrote, it was always the women, above all the young ones, who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of slogans, the amateur spies, and the nosers out of unorthodoxy. This is why women in politics is disastrous, okay? Women they don't actually, when it comes to most women, of course, there are different women out there, but, broadly speaking, women do not filter information through whether it's true or not. They filter information whether or not it is approved in their perceived group consensus, okay? So that's why women, as even Orwell wrote in 1984, that they are the strictest adherents to the party. They are the strictest adherents to tyranny. They're the ones that literally enforce that which destroys everything that's meaningful to us, okay? Because when women are not in their natural role as caretakers and nurturers, as mothers in the home, they will vote for things because the currency that women understand the most is attention and security. Okay? So then they will vote for the things, they will advocate for the things that they believe will bring them the most attention and security. And greatest standing in group perception. So, yeah, things are bleak, chat. Things are bleak, but never black pill. Never black pill. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned about immigration, about universal suffrage, about women voting, okay? A lot of things to learn about just what we have tolerated and allowed in the past century and how it was a grave mistake. Usagi, I personally feel better because it means that we are that much closer to his return. That's true. We are closer to Jesus' return. We'll never know when he'll be coming back, but, Christ will return, and we have hope in that. We have hope in that. Amen.